Today, I have a fantastic guest, William Buist. William is a highly skilled growth expert, and today we discuss all of the different elements that you need to work through in order to grow your business.
It's absolutely worth taking time to really think through, again, the whole process end to end. What do we want to tell people? When do we want to tell them that? And what do we want them to do when we have told them that?
People think that there's a quick fix to sales. There is no quick fix, guys. I know we all want one, and there's sometimes you might be lucky enough to get one by doing some kind of crappy outreach that's going to quickly, get you a opportunity. But I can tell you now that will be short-lived and you'll have the same problem again.
Looking after yourself is a key strategy, I think, for any business owner. As much as the marketing, the sales and everything else. And that's why it's a chunk of the audit. We look at that area and see what we can glean from what people answer and help them to focus on making themselves stronger.
Hey guys, it's me again, Katie Street, host of this podcast. And I would like to refer to myself as a little bit of a marketing expert. I mean, I have done it for the last 20 years. So you would hope that I know what I'm talking about. So today, as always, if you're new to this podcast, I'm going to just give you a bit of a heads up with what you're about to hear. So this podcast is called Marketing in the Madness, and it is called that for a reason, because the world is mad. And my aim really with my guests is to interview and speak to the people that will really help you grow your marketing, grow your reach, grow your engagement and influence so that you can hit your KPIs, hit your marketing goals, hit your sales goals, and ultimately grow your sales and grow your business. Today, I have a fantastic guest, William Buist. William is a highly skilled, growth expert. He talks about a lot of the things that I hold dear to my heart when it comes to marketing and growing a business. And today we discuss all of the different elements that you need to work through in order to grow your business. He works with some fantastic businesses, mainly in the B2B space. He does talk about this right at the end, but to give you some context, mainly businesses between £500,000 turnover and £10 million. So if you sit there, then you are going to love today's podcast. He tends to work directly with owners or founders and CEOs of businesses or MDs. So if you are one of those people, you're going to love today. I mean, I have taken so much away. You actually get to hear a bit about my story and the elements of this that we're really good at. And I really hope it will enable you to take a step back and think about, out of the different things that we talk about today, which ones you're doing really well at and which ones you could improve to help grow your business. So without further ado, I'm going to be quiet and we are going to go off and meet the fantastic William. So hello, William, and welcome to the podcast. I'm still getting used to saying not welcome to Word on the Street, which is my old podcast, but welcome to Marketing in the Madness. And today we have a subject which is very close to my heart. In fact, everything about marketing is close to my heart, but specifically what we're going to dig into today, because it's talking about what you are exceptional at and why that's important when you're developing and building an audience through your marketing strategies. But before we do that, William, can I ask you to give us a bit of history on yourself, because you've been running your own business for 20 years. You've got a huge amount of experience in helping businesses with their growth plans. So tell us a little bit about you and your business today.
Thanks, Katie, and thanks for having me along on the podcast. It's great to be here. 20 years ago, but where does the time go? It's amazing, isn't it? It flies by. I've really, over that time, I've had to have kind of three businesses, although it's one business, simply because the world changes around us, doesn't it? And when I started the business, early 2000s, I was working mostly with clients who were in my old industry. I was an insurance man before I set up my own business. And 2008 came along with the recession, and had to change the business a bit then. And I moved in at that time to working with small businesses, where I really found my home. I mean, it was a relief in many ways to find other people like me who'd set up their own businesses, who were working hard and making a difference in their markets, but knowing they could do more. And being able to help them to do that was a real pleasure and has remained so ever since. And then, of course, we get to 2019, 2020 and a pandemic. And again, I had to change the business from working primarily face-to-face to working primarily, as we are doing this morning on the podcast, over the internet. And again, that's enabled me to reach more people and to help more people more easily. And that's been fab too. So that's the quick whistle-stop tour of the journey so far.
And do you know what? That's a really important part about growing a business, or an element of growing a business, I should say, because you can't be a stick in the mud. You've got to be up for changing and understanding what's happening in the market and how you need to evolve in order to continue to grow and to, respond to the needs of the market, respond to the needs of your customers. And I think, developing long-term plans, although in terms of your growth, you've got to have long-term plans. Same at Street, we're only 3.5 years old, yet, the business we are today is incredibly different to the business we were a year ago, and almost totally different from the business that I set out to start. So we have plans, but we're not afraid to change those plans and evolve to the needs of the market and evolve to the trends and the behaviors that we see from certain clients and markets to make sure we're operating in a space where we can do brilliant work, where our clients want to buy us, and we're going to be able to deliver brilliant work for them. So I think there's so many elements that we can discuss around that. But of course, as well as running your business, and let's talk about, before we talk about the book, which I really want to talk about, can you tell me a bit about how you help businesses? So one thing I've done this morning, guys, and this is just typical Katie Street, I've done it right at the last minute. William sent over, if you can do this business audit. So of course I did it like an hour before the podcast started. But tell us about how you help businesses grow and some of those important elements, because I'm assuming I can pop a link in the show notes for people to go and fill in the audit for their businesses.
Of course, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah, happy to do that. That'd be fabulous. It's my work is always about helping organizations, first of all, to see where their big goal is, where do they want to go, and yes, recognize that can change over time a little bit, but actually the broad thrust of what I've been trying to do, and I'm sure this is true for you too, the big vision goal doesn't really change that much, but it's not always as clear as it needs to be. So the first part of what I do with clients is to help them really get great clarity on where they want the business to be at some point in the future. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, doesn't matter. What matters is what's the important goal for them, and getting that clarity, because with that clarity, we can then develop the strategies that will enable them to be heading in that direction every day. And it's, I always liken it to, it's like a journey to going on holiday or something, and you set off from home and there's a road closed. Well, you find a way around it, and you get to the airport and there's a massive queue for security, and you find a way through that. There are always going to be blocks and challenges. But if you know that the end goal is to be lying on a beach or skiing down a mountain or whatever the holiday is, you're going to focus on making sure that you get there. And that's what I want my clients to do. And then so we do that big piece of work around clarity first, days work together. And then after that, I tend to work with them on a monthly basis, having a couple of hours every month, really just to keep them accountable to that goal and to challenge them to push harder where they need to and do some of the harder things that we put off and think, well, I'll do that tomorrow, it'll be all right. Well, sometimes you just need a conscience or a voice on your shoulder going, actually, this is important and you need to get on with it. And that's what I do.
And what I really loved about my very quick read of the report this morning, and maybe we could talk through some of the report together on the podcast, because that might actually be really useful for our listeners. Well, be really useful. Basically, guys, I'm really selfish and I'm going to get William to give me some live advice on the podcast, but it will help give context and some of the areas that you pull out, because what I really liked about it, and I think as a founder of a business, and I'm a sole founder. I am 100% shareholder of Street. That actually the self part of it, the part that considers who I am and what I want, and I know how much I can influence the business. If I'm in a bad mood, or I'm being particularly frantic, or because I think I picked out the energy pick. I could resonate with all three of them, but the one that is I guess more overwhelming for me was the energetic side of it, as you can probably even hear if you're listening to this podcast. But that is really important to me, and I know that I can really put. I've done some really great leadership courses, over the past couple of years that I've been lucky enough to have funded, and I know that I can put real pressure on the team because I want to do more. I want to explore more things. And I've got the energy to do it. I have to understand that not all of my team are wired in the same way as I am. But I think understanding, certainly for small businesses, that is your influence on the business as a founder, as an owner, on how the business is, what it is, and how it affects everyone. I think it's sometimes something that people forget. The founders of agencies or the leaders of agencies, your CEOs, they have a huge influence over the culture of the business, over how it's run, and that's a really important thing, for me to understand. I know there's lots of areas that I can improve, but not thinking. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, not thinking of businesses as things, thinking of as a human thing, because in my world, although we do sell things and productized offerings, we're giving a service. It's a human to human sale. It's a human to human offering that we're pushing out to the market. So it has to start with us as humans, in my mind.
Yeah, and I couldn't disagree with anything that you said, Katie. That's entirely where my thinking is too. And it's we've mentioned that I've written a book. It's called Intentional Mastery. A big part of what I've written about is intentionality, being conscious of what is going on around you and how you impact that. And I think people do rightly focus on, I need to make sure that I'm serving my clients. I need to make sure I'm giving them what they need. But sometimes business owners forget in that service to look after themselves. And they get themselves into situations that are stressful and emotional. And that comes back and bites that service that they're hoping to give to their clients. So a big, one of the biggest areas of the book that I talk about is looking after yourself, thinking about your emotional awareness. How aware are you moment to moment of what you're feeling and how that's affecting what you're doing? But also mental resilience. There's a quote in the audit report from a chap called Jamie Cassio, which is resilience is about being able to overcome the unexpected. Sustainability is about survival, but the goal of resilience is to thrive. And so working on your own resilience, your ability to deal with the unexpected, to cope with it in a rational way and be able to look at it and react with appropriateness is really important. And it's a skill, and it's a skill that we can develop. And I saw, a lot of business owners in the recession in 2008, and again at the beginning of the pandemic, kind of throw their hands up and go, I just don't know what to do, rather than to ask the question, what can I do? It's a tiny shift. And yet, if we start thinking about what we can do, we change the dynamic completely. And I tell a very quick story. I'm minded of, if you've watched Apollo 13, the film, or if you're old enough as I am to remember it firsthand, there was a point about 10, 15 minutes after the explosion when everybody at Mission Control was kind of in a flat panic. And the mission controller, a chap called Gene Cernan, called for silence on his announcement, and then said, what have we still got on the spacecraft that's good? And it's a fundamental shift from this has gone wrong, that's gone wrong, that's gone wrong, that's gone wrong, to, well, what have we actually got that's still working? Well, life control is still working. We've still got attitude control. We've still got 3 live astronauts. you can start to work the problem. And that to me is the key of this. You can't do that if you're not healthy. You can't do that if you're not, physically well as well. So looking after yourself is a key strategy, I think, for any business owner, as much as the marketing, the sales, and everything else. And that's why it's a chunk of the audit. We look at that area and see what we can glean from what people answer and help them to focus on making themselves stronger.
Yeah, resilience is absolutely, I would say, key to success. You've got to be able to keep going and focus on, what that end goal and the reason why. And I think that's something certainly that as I've grown the business, I've become much better at giving myself time. I mean, I do probably put myself under too much pressure. But I enjoy putting myself under quite a bit of pressure. So in fact, this morning, go and follow me on Instagram, guys, if you want to. My handle on Instagram is just Streetmate, which is quite cool because there was a TV show called Streetmate, and then loads of people started following me. Unintentionally done. But I'm doing this week, for instance, and this will be old by the time, but I'm going to put a reel up about it. I'm just tracking my exercise journey. So I like to exercise every single morning before I start work, because it means that I start work, I sit down having, achieved something in the morning that I probably didn't want to do. Most mornings get out of bed at, 6, half 6, whatever time I go off to exercise. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to go exercise. And I could think, I'm not even going to make my bed because I'm going to come back and get into bed. I never come back and get into bed. I'm always hyped. I've got those amazing endorphins. So every morning, especially in the week, it can't happen. I say every morning, unless I'm like traveling and I need to be on a train at silly o'clock. But even then, I will make sure I get up and do some stretching or something. So I'm active. That's really important for me because it sets my mind in a good frame of mind. It gets me doing something that I didn't probably want to or think I could do, and I achieve something. So I've already ticked something off. And I'm also starting journaling is the next thing that I've just started. I'm doing a thing called 21 Days of Abundance at the moment, which is like meditation and journaling. So trying to map those things into my life that I know keeps me as a business owner sane, with a good positive mindset, that then hugely influences the business and all the team as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And quick tip on that: if you are traveling, can't do the exercise in the morning, travel half an hour earlier, get the earlier train and walk a bit towards where you're going before you get onto a tube if you're in London, or a bus or a taxi or whatever. It's surprising how far you can actually, most events I go to are within a half-hour walk of the train station that you land in anyway.
Yeah.
So actually just scheduling a little bit of extra time so you can walk at the end and you get your exercise that way.
Love that.
This is one of the things that I try to do with clients is lots of, small changes that are easy to make that make a big difference over time. 1 half-hour walk isn't going to make you fit, but a half-hour walk every day will. So
Definitely.
Finding a way to do that is one of the key things, really.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice. In fact, I do that, and I come in via Waterloo. So when I get into Waterloo, walk over that, go across the South Bank, always walk, because you don't even think it's 20, 25 minutes for me to walk into Soho. It takes no time. Depending on where I'm going, I pretty much walk everywhere around London because, like you say, it gives you that exercise. And I encourage the team to do it as well. One, it's better for the environment. You don't realise by the time you've walked around the tube, got on a sweaty train, and it probably takes you the same amount of time anyway. So you might as well walk. Obviously, if it's really rainy or horrible, then that does change things up. But yeah, definitely, I love those little things. Just like you say, as you build them up over time, they make a huge, important, big change to your mental state, which then impacts your business in self. So I'm going to tell you guys my scores, which will not mean much, but I'm going to run through the report actually, William. I'm breaking the questionnaire that we put out for the podcast. And I thought we'll talk about the different elements because it will be hopefully something that everyone who's listening can think about for themselves. So I scored 13. And there were a few different statements that I had to rate. One was about balance between my work and my personal life, which sometimes is better than others. At the moment, work is definitely a higher priority than most because we're probably slightly understaffed and very busy. Anything to talk about on balance and how to develop better balance, your tips for me to improve my balance.
I think one of the key things with, people talk about work-life balance like they're in two opposite scale, two opposite sides of the scale. And my own view of it is they're not, that life and work are part of your humanity, part of your existence, and thinking of them as a collective thing rather than I'm doing too much work and I've not got enough life. It's kind of, are you dead when you work?
So true.
What's going on there? So and I try to weave my work into the other things that I do. So, for example, I go skiing every year, and I got back into skiing through a work event that a friend of mine was running, a thing he calls Net Ski. He takes a group of business people away, and we spend a week skiing, but we also spend a week chatting and talking about our businesses and learning from each other. And so I've managed to mingle something that I love, the skiing, with something else that I love, which is working with other business people and hearing about what they're doing. So looking for those opportunities where you can bring things in your personal life into the work that you do, and things in your work that you can bring into your personal life. I am not suggesting, by the way, that you bore everybody when you go out for dinner with lots of stories from work. But there'll be lessons from work that and stories that are relevant, funny things that happen at work, that you can just intermingle. And so I just, biggest piece of advice is, if you're trying to make things balance, they won't. If you try to integrate them, they will.
Great. I absolutely love that, William. And in fact, I'm going on a work ski trip next month. So this is the way forward. And I've got I get in trouble with my accountant for talking about this too much. But there are so many fantastic conferences and different things that you can do in your business that are really fun, that inspire you, that help you learn. So for me, mapping those into the business and, like you say, integrating it. So it's a bit like a holiday, but actually I'm going to a conference and learning stuff, as well. I've got one in Ibiza this year. I've got, client trips where I'm going to Paris and Munich because we're hosting events for them. So that's great fun. That's still my life. I'm still a person. So I love that. Thinking about integrating it rather than work-life balance. Brilliant. I think that's a huge mindset change, which is really, really important. We've kind of spoken about this one already, but health. I rated my health as good. So how important is health?
Oh, it's absolutely critical. Let's face it, if your health goes downhill and you end up dead, you can't do much business. So we don't want that to happen. And when we are, at our best, when we're healthy, when we've got lots of energy, the work seems to just fly by, doesn't it? We're in flow and everything's good. So I think it's important to think about what you eat. We all eat food that we shouldn't eat from time to time. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying you've got to eat your 5 vegetables and never have another bit of chocolate at all. I'm just saying, again, it comes back to intentionality and why I talk about intentional mastery. Be intentional about what you eat. If you want to go out and have a pizza one night with some friends, great, go out and do that. Don't do it every night. So, and we've talked about walking and taking some exercise and being as physically fit as you can. And of course, for some people that can be difficult. They could get an injury. They maybe haven't looked after their health and are now not as fit as they would like to be. And my advice always is that a little bit more is always better actually than a lot more, but a little bit more regularly rather than a lot more now and again. I've seen people go off and join a gym and do lots of exercise, injure their back or injure something else, and then they spend a month, because they have to, not doing any exercise, and actually they end up worse off than they were before. Whereas somebody who does, I can't walk half an hour, it's too difficult. Okay, walk for 10 minutes, walk for 5 minutes. And before you know it, you'll be doing more and more. I started swimming again about 2 years ago. First time I got to the end of one length, I could barely breathe. It's partly because I'd forgotten really how to swim properly and all, so I was swallowing water and everything else. But now I swim once a week. I plow up and down and do about half an hour of swimming without too much bother. And it's good exercise, because it's an all over exercise. But when I started, I must have looked like a complete muppet. And that's okay. It's because I'm getting to the point where I can get that fitness that I wanted.
I love that. Again, it's about being intentional, isn't it? And not, if it sounds a bit like, I'm going to say this totally wrong, but is it the rabbit in the, oh gosh, the tortoise and the rabbit? No, the tortoise and the rabbit. The
tortoise and the hare, yeah.
Tortoise and the hare, that's it. Because, actually being the tortoise sometimes and growing a business, I definitely feel that often is like this. I am the hare. I want to do everything yesterday. I'll push myself to my limits. In fact, and the next thing we're going to talk about is advisors. But, in my personal life now, I have a personal trainer. And I'm very lucky to be able to, my business has enabled me to be able to afford these things. I have a personal trainer. I have a physio because I was trying to run the marathon and I did myself some damage trying to do that. So now I was going to rebook in for this year, and my physio was like, Katie, you can do it, but you're probably going to ruin all this exercise you do every day. You might have to stop for a couple of months afterwards. I can get you through it, or you can start doing other things and run 5K. And we're working on a plan, so I'm still in a bit of pain because I've torn a ligament, but I can still exercise every day. I know how to work around it. I'm strengthening the muscle. So it's about, it kind of reminds me of business in a way, because I'm strengthening the things that I need to strengthen in order to fix the weakest link, which I'm hoping we're going to kind of get there today in this conversation. But it's a good analogy, and having those advisors, I want to push forward. I want to be extra. I want to do everything. And without advisors, I would do that. So one of the other things that you had in the self section of the questionnaire that I filled in was around those trusted advisors. And I cannot advocate this enough. It's something that I truly believe in my personal and my business life. I have a non-exec. I think having those check-in points are really, really helpful. So I'd love to hear more from you on that as well, William.
Yeah, and I don't think for a moment that your personal trainer is just your personal trainer. He or she is also a business advisor, because they're advising you on your health. That means you can run a better business, and that's it is important. I have a physio who I go to about once every 6 months, not because I have a problem that I need physiotherapy for, but I get him to check me over. And just make sure that everything's in alignment and that I've got all the flexibility that I need. And he normally finds things that I wasn't aware of, and I can fix them before they become a big problem. So those health advisors are part of your business team as well. But I think you're right. It's important to have people around you that you trust, people that you can pick up the phone to if something happens in the business and you just are tearing your hair out, not sure what to do. And sometimes just talking things through with somebody who's a good listener and understands your business, you'll reach the right conclusion in a way that you can't do if you're just talking to a wall or out on a walk talking to yourself. Having those people around you that they can ask the right question. Hang on, Katie, hang on. Last week you told me that, and now you're saying this. What's going on? And, those kind of moments can be ones where you go either, well, let me explain, and that explanation's useful, or, oh, you're right, I shouldn't be doing this. And those are really valuable moments. And I think you can't do this stuff alone. And, you've got staff, you've got employees, but there are some things you wouldn't want to share with them. So you need those external people who are not directly connected with the business, but who know it well, that can share the journey with you and be there to give you that advice and hold you accountable too.
Yeah, totally. And I love how, I'd never really thought of my PT as someone who is a business advisor, but she is, and she's brilliant. She always, she chats to me about all sorts of different things, and having that external view as well as my non-exec and the people that I have specifically for the business, having those external views, she says things to me sometimes. I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? So it's so good.
That's looping back to the whole integrating work and life. Actually,
Yes.
it's a perfect example of it.
It's all true, and we're actually starting to do. I'm bringing in my PT, an amazing lady who I do breath work with, into our strategy days, for the team, because for me, it's one of our. In fact, we're building out values around it. The health and the mindset of all the staff is so important. So integrating that into work, because they're all whole people just like I am. It's really important for me as I hopefully continue to grow the business and go on the upwards trajectory that we've been on over the past 3.5 years. So the next section that I filled in, I'm hoping this is really useful, guys. It felt like a natural thing for me to do, especially as I filled it all out this morning, and it really got me thinking. So I'm hoping it's going to get you thinking, was around systems. Now, I graded us quite poorly here, and I probably have been a bit mean. One of the reasons being is that we are looking at everything at the moment in terms of how we manage projects. So moving things from Trello, we've kind of outgrown Trello and moving over to a platform called Monday.com. How we integrate that with everything like Xero and our accounting systems, how we onboard new clients, how we onboard new staff, how the systems can make life easier from a financial reporting point of view. So, like you say, I think every business has these repetitive tasks, from the VAT to your new business process. We use HubSpot for our marketing and for our sales processes, how we serve customers. Everything has a process, and how you even write content now, especially things like ChatGPT coming out, which is incredible and is really helping businesses scale up their ability to write content and develop blogs and articles. So a lot of this can be outsourced, some of it can be automated. What can you tell us about successful businesses on growth, I guess, the positive growth trajectories and the systems and how they should use them?
Oh, well, we could talk about this for a long time.
I know.
I'll keep it short. I think the biggest single lesson over the years is that, if you automate a good process, you make it work better and make it more scalable. If you automate a process that isn't working too well, you just make it not work well even faster. And part of the challenge with automating processes that I see with businesses is that they kind of rush into it a bit, looking to save time, and end up creating a bigger problem that they then have to undo and do again, work out what's happened. Things that they hadn't thought of that crop up when you actually, integrate with clients and customers. They will never quite ask the same question in the same way. They'll never quite want exactly the same thing. So if you automate things, you also need to make sure you've got good feedback so that when something isn't meeting that particular customer needs, and you can drop them out of the process and deal with it personally if you need to. So that, putting some feedback loops into your process is always worthwhile. The other thing, I liken it to we go to the supermarket and buy food, and it has dates on it. It has sell by dates or use by dates, which means slightly different things. But I also think processes should have a review by date on them. That we just make sure that every now and again you check that process is still the right one. Is it still working in the right way? And from what you've just described, it sounds like you've kind of done that with your Asana to Monday transition. You've looked at what Asana was doing when you were a little bit smaller and probably a bit more agile than you can be today with more people involved in the business, that you need a tool that's got more depth and more ability to cope with a variety of different things. And that's what Monday's doing for you, I guess. I know both tools, and I think they both are really good at what they do, but they don't do quite the same thing. So you would use one until you needed the other. And that, there will be a time when you need to review Monday.com and think, actually, is that now meeting what I need? And again, so have a think about, with all those things, when do I next need to have a really hard look at this? It's not the kind of every day-to-day usage look. It's I need to have a strategic look at, is this still the right tool for the business? And new things come along, like Chat GPT. And I am sure that there'll be a lot of businesses that use Chat GPT to generate content. Why wouldn't you? It's a great tool, does a fabulous job. But if you want to stand out, you're going to have to do some work to it as well. You can't just take their output, because we'll all just get to recognize, oh, that's come from Chat GPT because it sounds like Chat GPT. Doesn't sound like Katie Street anymore. That wouldn't work for you. So you still need to have your personality on those tools. So that's another big important part of automation is, you can automate the process, but you can't automate the personality. And the personality is important.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And I love, I'm always pushing us to look at new technologies, to look at our processes. Traditionally, we used to use Keynote for everything and present these beautiful strategy decks to our clients, as lots of agencies do. And now I'm like, let's just keep it simple. Let's do it in Miro. Like, we spend so much time. I don't even think the clients, we invest so much time in making these beautiful presentations. So many little things that you can change in your process that have such a big impact on time, and making sure that you've got that you understand what your values as a business are, but what are your KPIs? How are you judged? What does your client really want from you? And if there are things that you can do to improve that process to have better impact and get better results, that's why I love review everything often. That is such a good tip, because if you're consistently, one, you've got to stay ahead and keep looking at the market, what tools are out there, what tools could help with this. But keeping it authentic to you and your goals and your vision, mission, and what you need to achieve to be successful for your clients, if you can wrap that all up. And that's why I'm a big fan of, I'm part of a lot of community groups where I go and listen and learn and talk. And, if I just kept myself quite insular, I wouldn't even know what Chat GPT is. I mean, I think it'd be hard to get away from it because it literally is everywhere at the moment.
It's been difficult to miss, hasn't it?
Yeah. How can I use it to make it more, to help my business? And I do use it. I'm not afraid to say that I haven't used it and played around with it, but authenticity is also really important for me. So having, sometimes I might ask ChatGPT to write something for me, and then basically kind of rip it apart, put it back together again, so that it is Katie Streetable. And usually it doesn't say everything or know everything that I know and I need to talk about, but it might give me a head start and help me structure a piece of content in a better way, or whatever it might be. So there's looking at all of these tools and understanding the impact that you need to have, and what are the priority impacts that you need to have, and therefore which technologies are going to help you get there best, in the quickest, best, most efficient way, is so important. And also, William, just to map back, I am exactly the same, where we go, we need to change, we need to get more organized, we need to do this, and shoving a round peg into a square hole, because I'm like, our project management isn't working how I want it to work. But actually, and we've got a fantastic consultant working with us at the moment, looking at the bigger picture, saying, look, we understand that this is something that needs to be fixed quickly. However, we need to look at the business as a totality, because otherwise you can implement the wrong system, exactly like you say. I've literally just been having this conversation last week. And so, it does mean we're going to do it a bit more. I'm going back to really trying to bring out my inner tortoise here, and not be the hare, but thinking about things so that you get the right strategies in place. Super, super important.
And I think in the audit report, you see, with your score on that area was about average for small businesses. So nothing, a little touch above average actually. So nothing to worry about particularly, but the key advice is focus on those activities that add the most value to your existing customers. Get those right first, and then you can, that you're going to give good service. That when you get a new client, they're going to fall into those processes you've got that are going to add value to them, and they'll sing your praises and bring more people to you. Then you can think about, what do we need to automate in other parts of the business? But first of all, focus on those existing customers, and that's where you'll get the best result.
Definitely. That's a big step change for us at Street. You know, we're really good at doing a great job, but definitely, and we've got all the right ideas, but definitely running the projects more smoothly, more efficiently is high on my agenda at the moment. So it was good to see that in the report. It really made me think about what we're doing. And luckily we've just started that, kicked that journey off. So good. So hopefully that score is going to get even better. Now, the next one, which is one very close to my heart, which we have never traditionally struggled with at Street because it is what I do and I'm a big believer in practicing what you preach, is sales. And I love that you say this, you know, the most important part of any business. It really is. And I'm not saying the process stuff that I'm just talking about, but if you don't have anything to process, then it's pretty pointless working on your process. You've got to have the sales. You've got to have the clients. So if you don't have any revenue, you don't have any clients, or you don't have anyone buying your products, you do not have a business. So I'm hoping that I scored all right here. I can't remember. I'm trying to look at my score. So average score for a small business is 7.6. Yeah, we scored 18. So that was a high score. Good. And well, I'm going to let you talk about this because I really liked the questions that I ran through here. But talk to me about the important things that you audit that businesses should be thinking about when thinking about their sales process.
Yeah, sure. And the first question is really about the sales process, and have you got a process that is strategically optimized, that you apply consistently, and it's well understood throughout the business. And it is amazing how many businesses I run across that do not have a clear sales process, or they have a kind of vague process, but they don't apply it consistently. You really, I think, to get a steady flow of sales, the key process, the steps you take your prospects through so that they are in a position to buy from you is actually not really about selling. It's much more about communication. It's about being transparent and open with what it is that you're offering and what they will get from it. And if people understand that clearly and what they will get from it is something that they want, you don't need to sell to them because they'll buy it. And so that getting that process right is really important. But I think what's also important is differentiating what you offer compared to other people in your market. And that's not about having, I don't think it's about price particularly. I mean, price can be a differentiator, but my advice usually to people is to put their prices up as a differentiator, not down. It's too easy to fall into the trap of, I'm not selling anything, so I need to cut the price. But the reason you're not selling anything may be that people see, particularly in service businesses, that if you only think you're worth that much money and you're cutting it, you can't be that good. Good service businesses charge a fair rate for what they do, and that fair rate is usually one that makes the customer kind of just think, "Ooh, I've got to make a tough decision here. That's a bit of money, but if I'm definitely going to get what they're promising me, then I'm prepared to make that investment." And if you're not convinced of the value of your product, why should your customer be? So getting the differentiation right and the pricing right, and as I say, generally my advice is put your prices up, not down, to do that. And then having a good system, and you said you use HubSpot to manage your pipeline of prospects. And I think it's really important to have a good CRM system. So you know who you're talking to, you know what the next step is. Some businesses will take depending on your product, the prospects will take a long time to make a decision. For some businesses, it can be really short. Unless you understand that and you know when you need to reach out to customers and ask them the question. And that understanding will give you the clarity of business volumes as well and what's coming. And that means you can have the people in place ready for when those clients turn up. You're not going to be surprised and find yourself suddenly overloaded and unable to support them. So those were the areas we covered. You scored really well. It doesn't surprise me because you've got some of those systems in place, and it's clear from our conversation you've got the strategic view of that. My advice for you with the score that you've got is to be vigilant for opportunities. Keep your eyes open, particularly with your existing clients, for additional opportunities with them, because they will be there. They're working with you. They've seen the value you can bring. They know the quality of what you do, and you've got an opportunity to talk to them about what else they need that you could provide, and use the relationship you've already got to scale and grow the business further.
Totally. There's always areas that we can improve. We are, I would hope, very good at both attracting and winning new clients, because that's what my business does for other businesses. So yeah, I feel that I have to practice what I preach, and I have to be good at it myself. But and we do. I scored as high against, I think, some of the things that you have just spoken about. That we've got a sales process. I mean, does everyone know it in the business? Probably not. But because I did that little check-in today, I've gone, do you know what? I'm going to talk everyone through the sales process in our next strategy day in March, where the whole agency comes together. Do our products and services differentiate us? 100%. In fact, a client that we didn't win recently came back and said, you were the most differentiated. You had the strongest value proposition, and it was really clear how you were different to the others. The others had services that we don't really do, that they decided that they wanted, which is fair enough. They wouldn't have been the right client for us. And I'm happy with that, because I don't want to win a client that wants us to do things that we can't do. So that it also helps me qualify myself out of the wrong type of opportunities and potentially clients that could have not been a great fit for us. And I know that we have a strong pipeline, and I can see into the future. And there's two things that you say, that helps. One, it helps me sleep at night. But two, it enables me to scale up in terms of recruitment and or contractors, freelancers, as and when we need to. But also the other way around. I know if if there's going to be a bit of a slump, that I have, got some things that I need to do in order to ramp up new business, which we don't tend to need to do at Street, because we've got a ongoing strategic approach to attracting and winning new clients. That means that I'm never worrying where my next lead is coming from, because we always have plenty of opportunities in the pipeline. And that's because it's a consistent, muscle that we work hard, and we make sure that our new business and our marketing is always switched on.
Fabulous. And, I encourage every business to follow your example with that. It's so important.
Yeah, it's something that I know they don't do, because that's why I have a business, right? It's basically what we do, what we help them do. But it is so important, and if you can get that working, I promise you. People think that there's a quick fix to sales. There is no quick fix, guys. I know we all want one, and there's sometimes you might be lucky enough to get one by doing some kind of crappy outreach that's going to quickly, get you a opportunity. But I can tell you now that will be short-lived, and you'll have the same problem again. So taking an approach, which, I think we're going to move on to this subject next, because it's the next one, that I personally believe is marketing-led, that builds you engagement and influence with an audience that come to love, trust, and engage with your content. Like, I put a post out last week about sponsors for this podcast. Literally, I've got such an engaged audience. I think we reached about 15 to 20,000 people. I've booked 5 or 6 meetings for podcast sponsors off the back of one LinkedIn post. Now, if that was the first LinkedIn post I'd ever done, then I definitely wouldn't have got that. But I've got an engaged audience because I've worked really hard. And it is, effort and time. And we have clients come to us that have never done this. They expect that to go, right, I want to see a change in 3 months. No, that's taken me, well, not even just the 3.5 years that I've been running Street. That's taken me my whole life to build that engagement and be consistent on LinkedIn and push helpful content out that's talking to the needs of my audience. So I think you call this, and I really like this because I've not heard of it before, signposting. So mastering how you get known and being engaging. Talk me through, and I'm hoping I scored high on this. So average score for average score for a small business on this is 9.83, and I scored 20. So there we go.
Yeah,
did I right?
And again, it doesn't surprise me. I've seen what you're doing, Katie, and it is very clear. And I call it signposting because I think that's the ideal of what we want to do when we're marketing, when we're talking to prospective customers, when we're talking to our existing clients as well. We don't just we don't just market to new people. We're also constantly telling our existing clients what the business is up to, and we're telling our staff and our suppliers as well. So it reaches everywhere. And I called it signposting because it was a day when I was driving along the M4 heading towards Wales, and I just kind of musing, as you do sometimes in the car, at the way that the signposts were designed and how they worked. And when you leave London or leave the east of the country along the M4, you don't see signs for Bristol or Newport. You see signs for the West. And what the signs are there to do are not to tell you where you're going, they're to tell you that you're on the right road. And I think, there's a big lesson for marketing there, that we can sometimes tell people too much too soon, and all that detail just confuses them. Whereas, a simple message that tells people, oh, yeah, you're involved with helping people do better sales, aren't you, Katie? Right. I need to come and have a conversation with you. And in that conversation, you can start to tell them a bit more detail. And when the time is right, you say, actually, you've arrived at your turning off the motorway. Now I'm going to tell you the town. I'm going to tell you how far away it is. I'm going to give you a lot more information that you need. And that's why I called it signposting. You can't do good signposting unless you know why you do what you do, unless you've got a really clear purpose in the business and a proposition that's easily understood. And that, over time, when those two things are present, people will start talking about your brand behind your back, hopefully saying good things, not bad. But, they will be talking about you when you're not there. And that then is about getting, high levels of engagement, which you've talked about on the social platforms. So again, not surprised that you've scored really well there. And it's absolutely worth taking time to really think through, again, the whole process end to end. What do we want to tell people? When do we want to tell them that? And what do we want them to do when we have told them that? Is it stay on the road, keep talking to us? And I've content on my website. I'm building up a bank of content that is all about, helping people to see that they're the right sort of customer for us. So I have a post that I talk about why I don't work with just anyone. I work with my target market. So if you're not in my target market, it's been great to meet you, but I'm probably not the right person for you. Somebody else will give you better help. But if you are in my target market, let's keep talking. So that is part of that early information to help people to see, is William the right person for me to be working with or not? And if we're not, that's great. Then neither of us will waste time in a conversation that's going to take us nowhere. And if you are the right person, then let's have that conversation.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? Like, it's going back, I guess, a step to the sales process, and something that I talk about a lot is, not just, you've got to explain why to buy you and give them the confidence that you understand and that you have got a, potentially differentiated view on how to do these kind of things, and the right view on how to do these things that fits with them as a client. But also, you've got to make it easy for them to buy you and tell them how to buy you and who you're for. And you can be doing that through case studies, showing like these are the kind of other businesses that I've helped, that naturally, without having to go, this is who I work with, that people will start to get that in terms of how to buy you, having packaged things that they can buy really easily. So all of those things are a really important part of the sales process, but also really important parts of your signposting marketing content that you're pushing out. You've got to have all three of those different types of content. The insights, helpful content that's talking to the problems that your audience have and helping them overcome those problems and your opinion on them. You've then got to have the content that is showing them that you've done it before, ideally. In fact, that probably is the least important piece of content that clients that I speak to always think, I can't do anything because I haven't got any case studies yet, or I haven't got the ROI back. Important, but not the most important. Actually, the most important thing is, have you built influence? Have you got an opinion? And can you help me? Because everyone has to start somewhere. Otherwise, no one would ever launch a new business. So you don't have to have case studies, guys. It is not the most important thing. And then, how do I buy you?
Yeah.
Those two things are the most important, and I think that's really interesting. William, who do you work with? I think that'd be really interesting for our listeners. So, who is your ideal client?
So my ideal client is businesses actually quite like yours, Kate. That are established, been around for a little while, have got their feet under the table of what they do and an understanding of it, but know that they could be doing so much better. And what I would love to do is to work with them to help them focus in on where are those areas where they can find the improvements quickly, and to hold them accountable to doing that. I work predominantly with B2B companies, so businesses that work with other businesses rather than with members of the public and consumers, and mostly in the services arena, so training companies, coaches, agencies, those sorts of people. So it's because that's where my history and my experience allows me to bring the most value to them.
Amazing. And businesses of every size, are there any kind of sweet spots that you love? I mean, I've worked with and at businesses of every size. I know now the businesses that we're better working with usually are sort of anything from, I don't know, 15, 20 million pounds upwards to probably up to about 100 million. We tend to work more with Martech businesses these days because they can afford us. They've got really good sales teams in house that we can be generating leads for them to help convert. And a small business, if we work with a small business at the street, the reality is they haven't got the bandwidth to do the things that we need to, unless they want to pay us loads of money, they need to pay us more, but they can't afford to pay us more. So it's those businesses, practice makes perfect. I have worked with lots of those. You desperately want to help them. They can't afford us to do everything we need to do, and they don't have the bandwidth in-house to do it themselves, or the knowledge to do it themselves. So we know, from practice, I know who I'm good for. Who are you guys good for?
Yeah, and I'm sure you also know people who you can refer to those smaller businesses.
Exactly.
That are a much better fit for them because they're in that space.
Yeah.
For me, I work one-to-one, so I'm generally working with the business owner. They are usually a sole shareholder or a majority shareholder at least. So they tend to be the smaller end. Anything from £500,000 up to about 10 million quid is my sweet spot. And,
Nice.
and the ideal sweet spot is those people who've kind of built to the point, and I'll give you a little warning actually for your business, knowing how many staff you have. There are a couple of points at which it gets difficult to grow. Going from sort of 6 to 10, tough, because the moment you've probably got 6 or 7 people who can mostly turn their hand to most things. Not everybody will do everything, but people will be able to turn their hand to most things. As you get up towards 10, you will start to be having specialists, people who are only able to do what they do. And that can be a challenge if something happens in the business that means you don't have the right skills. So I work with people going through that transition. The second big transition is up around the mid 20 to 30 sort of employee level, because at that point you start to departmentalize, and it's the next stage on, and that transition too can be very difficult. In fact, if you look at the stats, there aren't very many businesses at any one time that are sitting with more than 25 and less than 50 employees.
Wow.
Now they oscillate in there. Some will go into it and then struggle, not make money, start losing money because they've got people that they're not keeping fully employed, that they let people go and shrink again. Others will race through it. My advice, if you're close to that, is go and hire, if you're at 40 people, go and hire another 10. You won't know how the hell you're going to afford it. But if you stay at 40, you'll probably end up losing money and either having to shrink or get an investment. Whereas if you bite the bullet, take courage in both hands and kind of bounce through that and get enough people so the business can focus on the right things again, it'll make all the difference.
It's so hard, isn't it? And we're actually going to stay pretty stable this year. We've not grown in fact, will stay almost exactly. We might have a tiny bit of growth, for like 10, 20 grand, not like the big amount of growth that I was hoping for last year. And we got up to about 12 staff. And then over the summer last year, it was really tough. We lost for the first time. I had just, I was worried about, is it to do with the culture? What's changed? But I think it was, there were I won't discuss everything on here, although I'm quite happy about it too, but more the people that were working for me, I don't want to in any way, say anything out of turn. But, we lost 4 people in quite a quick, over 2 or 3 months. All these people handed their notice in, and they were all people that had been with me for quite a long time. And at one point I was thinking, gosh, they were going off together, like what's happening? They weren't. Some of it was coincidental, but looking back on it now, I really understand why that happened, and definitely not something I'm going to let happen again, which also has kind of scared me as a business owner, like going, don't want to grow quite quickly, that so I've got to make sure that I've put the right things in place, but having someone with you on that journey to help advise, to understand those kind of growth points, because there's 9 of us now, so we're at around about that 10 person number again.
It's a risky time. And I think what you probably saw is that if they've been with you for quite a while and you grow, the business changes as it grows, and there's more people involved in it. And for some people, that change is something that just doesn't feel comfortable. So, being aware that, when you do decide to grow again and push through that 10 and up into 12 and 14 and 16 and so on, that some of the 10 you've got might decide, this is not for me anymore. This business is changing in a way that doesn't suit me. And I think that's okay. And if you know it's likely to happen and you've now had that experience, you can be ready for it.
Yeah.
And I think if somebody's not going to be, somebody who's really happy in a small team of 6 or 7 isn't going to be happy in a larger team of 15, the right thing for them to do is to go and find a small team somewhere else. And it gives you the opportunity to find the person who now fits the square hole that you've made instead of the round hole that you had.
So true.
So it's not a bad thing that they've gone at all. Obviously, you've got relationships and that can be painful, but it's an indication of normality, actually, rather than abnormality.
Yeah. And actually most of them did end up going to larger businesses, but we just changed quite a bit as a business in terms of what we needed, and they didn't want to do that job anymore. They'd outgrown it. They were ready for the next thing. Their own careers were progressing, and that's fine. That happens. And I love that. Hopefully, they've learned a lot and been on a really, crazy, fun, exciting ride with us that has helped them grow their career. So, I get that now, and I definitely, understand. But I think because it was the first time people had ever really left, I was like, and we have had other people leave here and there, but it was all quite close together. But I know now I always need to be recruiting. I always need to be speaking to people. It's just as important for our growth as the attracting and the winning new clients is attracting and winning brilliant talent that culturally fit us and know who we are. And actually our content helps us do that. We do attract amazing people. I'm very lucky. Street, I almost think of Street now as Street V2 because who we work with is slightly different, and our staff have had a big change in guard that we're on V2 now, but I am aware that V3 will come, V4 will come. We'll be constantly evolving, and I quite like that. I respond well to change, and it's just bringing everyone with me on the journey. That's the whole piece. William, I do feel like I need to have a separate conversation with you about maybe helping me at Street. I do have, like I say, a non-exec already who I love, who works very specifically with creative and digital agencies, but maybe there's a conversation we can have outside of today. Now you've got a bit more insight into my business. Before I let you go, what we haven't done is talked about the book. So first of all, we're going to pop a link, I'm calling it a questionnaire. It's not a questionnaire. What do I call it? Survey?
I call it an audit.
Audit. That's the word I'm looking for. So I'll put a link to the audit so you can audit your business. It's really useful actually to look at where you need to focus your attention, and actually there's some really practical advice on the action and the focus of your time and energy to help your business grow. So definitely go and fill that out. We'll pop that in the show notes. William, talk to me a little bit about the book. So I haven't read the book yet. I feel like we should probably have another podcast once I've read the book, and there was a whole other subject that we haven't talked about yet today. But tell me a little bit about the book, and again, who should be reading the book? How is it going to help them?
Cool. So, yeah, the book's called Intentional Mastery, and its subtitle is Step Beyond Your Expertise and Build Better Business. We're all, the market I work in, and I think the people you work with too, Katie, are experts in their own field, and they will have got to becoming an expert through a journey of gathering knowledge, building skills, and exploring their experience over years to build that expertise. But I want to help people take another step, the step beyond that to mastery of their subject. Mastery is about really deeply understanding quite a narrow area of what you are really good at, and making it accessible to those people who need the value that it brings. It's one of the ways that I think individuals differentiate themselves from others in their market. We don't just hire a lawyer if we've got a problem. We will go to a contract lawyer if it's a problem with a contract. We might go to a business contract lawyer. You see what I'm doing here is narrowing down the focus. And the people who are the very best at resolving, business contractual problems as a lawyer will probably focus on one or two areas of law that they really understand in enormous detail. And it's a journey that I think those who choose to go on it, not everybody will. In the book, I talk about practitioners, people who do a great job every day, but they're not yet expert and maybe don't want to be. They come to work, they do their job, they do it really well, and that's fine. Their interests may lie elsewhere. But for those who choose to become an expert and then choose to take that final step and become masters, that's what the book's about, helping people to do.
I love that. So interesting. And I think for me, a really important read right now as I'm kind of entering our next phase of growth. So, William, thank you so much. I will have you back on once I've read the book. I think that would be really helpful for all of our lovely listeners. And we'll pop some notes in the show notes about the book so that you guys can go and order it for yourselves and also have a read, and then we can get you back on. Maybe I'll even ask our lovely audience to collate some questions if they have anything from having read the book, and we can chat through that, because I'm sure I will have some.
That would be fabulous.
It could be quite a good interactive session. I like it.
And for those who like to listen rather than to read, it is available on audio, on Audible as well, read by me.
Oh, wow. See, this is a whole other thing that I want to talk to you about, because I'm really interested in, I don't have the time to do the million things that I really want to do, as well as writing a book. But I do feel like there's probably a couple of different books in me, one about my personal life, one about my skills in the marketing and agency marketing growth specialisms that I have. So I definitely feel like there's a book in me there somewhere. So I'd love to talk to you more about the journey that you've been on, because I'm sure, again, a lot of our listeners would be interested in writing a book. But I feel like it's a separate episode, because that we can just talk about the book, because we've already done an hour. I've already stolen you for longer than I was supposed to today, William. A big thank you, guys. I really hope that I know for me, this has been super helpful. It's really enabled me to think about the next phase of growth for Street. That is exactly what I want it to have done for you guys. So a big thank you, William, for giving up, just over an hour of your time to come and chat to me today.
Absolute pleasure, Katie. It's been a delight. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. And watch this space, guys. William will be back and we will be talking about the book. What a great episode. Every week. This is why I just love doing the podcast. Every week I get to speak to these amazing people that just give me so many insights and ideas for growing my business. And I really try to ask the questions that I want to know, because I'm hoping that you guys listening have probably got a similar mindset to me and want to ask the same questions. But if there are things that you do specifically want to know, especially with William, because I am going to get him back on, do pop me a little email. Feel free to mail me direct, katie.street@street.agency. That's katie.street@street.agency. And if you've got any questions for William, for future guests, things that you love, things that you want to hear more about, please message me. I will be sure to come back to you and integrate your questions into this podcast. This is all about you guys. I want to make this content super valuable. On that, last request, this is something for you to do. So, of course, go and check out the show notes from today. And if you're interested in hearing more from William or going and taking the quiz, I keep calling it a quiz, going to do the audit, he did correct me, going to do the audit yourself, please go and do that. Just doing that alone will give you loads of helpful insights into the focus areas that you should be focused on, and it will help score you against other businesses of a similar size to yours. But also, if you love today's podcast, please go and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. I really appreciate it. I love seeing your comments. I love hearing from you and seeing what you love. If you can take a few minutes, pop over to Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review, make sure that you're subscribed and that you're automatically downloading the podcast by hitting the little bell button, I think it is on Apple, or pressing the subscribe button on Spotify, Apple, wherever it is that you go to listen, because then every single week when we launch a new episode, you will find out about it first. You will be ahead of the game. You'll have all the insights and the help, the tactics, the tips that you need to grow your marketing engagement, reach, and hit your sales KPIs. Go do it. I hope you loved today's episode. I hope that you come and listen to me or watch me or whatever you're doing again soon. And yeah, fingers crossed, go and smash your marketing goals today, guys.